I found a tracker hidden in my car and decided to stick it on a cargo truck heading to Canada. Now, I've just received the weirdest call, and I'm not sure what to make of it. Have you ever found yourself jumping to a conclusion so bizarre that it seems impossible, yet you can't shake the thought? That's where I am right now, and I could really use some outside perspective. I'm Marco, and I've been happily married to my wife Melissa for several years. She's an amazing woman who brings so much joy to my life, and I've always tried to do the same for her. That said, I found myself in a situation where I don't know what to think. I'm starting to suspect something about her, something so strange that it can't possibly be true. And no, it's not infidelity. I know infidelity is a big topic here, and most posts bring it up, but it's probably not the case in my situation, or at least I hope it's not. Before I get into it, let me give you some context. I have a great job, but it involves frequent travel, which has always been a bit of a sore spot for Melissa. She's a bit paranoid and suspicious at times, though she wasn't like this when we first got together. We met in college and quickly became close friends. She was one of the only people, besides my childhood best friend Liam, with whom I could truly open up. Liam and I were inseparable growing up, but as Melissa and I grew closer, our friendship naturally shifted to a romantic relationship. At the time, Melissa seemed almost too good to be true. I even wondered if she was hiding something, but we had been friends for so long that I figured I'd know if there was anything to worry about. Eventually, we got married and started our life together. For anyone wondering, Liam is still my best friend. He's married now and lives nearby, so he's very much a part of my life. Anyway, getting back on topic, a few months after we got married, I started noticing that Melissa was actually a very distrustful person. She didn't try to hide it, and when I asked, she told me outright that she felt insecure and that, since I traveled a lot, she was very scared that someone might take me away from her. I'm not going to lie, it's a bit annoying to have a paranoid wife, but it's also very endearing. The way I see it, she can't bear to be without me even for a minute, which is why she wants to know where I am and what I'm doing at all times. I won't say it's easy because, as I said, it can get very annoying, to the point where we've had fights because I didn't pick up her call and she got mad at me. But as long as you remember that she does it out of love, you can have a good relationship. However, the person in my position needs to be very patient, otherwise it just won't work. Honestly, I think if it were anyone else, this marriage wouldn't have lasted. So I sometimes joke with my wife that she's very lucky to have me, and she agrees. That's how my life usually goes. I go to work, I'm told where I need to travel that week and for how many days, and I tell my wife. She pretends to be mad, and I make her laugh. But this week was different. A few days ago, I found out I'd have to travel quite far for a client meeting, so obviously Melissa wasn't happy about me being gone for 2 days. When she gets upset, she acts like a child, and I have to work really hard to convince her. She knows I have to go and does this because she knows I enjoy convincing her. So, after promising to take her to her favorite place for dinner, she finally agreed, and we had a fun day. The next day, I left. That same afternoon, I had the meeting and checked into my hotel. The next day, as I was getting ready to leave, a coworker who had attended the meeting with me called to say he had lost his ring and was worried he might have left it in my car. He was from the nearby branch, so he'd already gone back to work. I told him I'd check and call him back. So I stopped at a gas station and started looking in every nook and cranny to find it. While I didn't find the ring, my coworker later explained he dropped it somewhere else. I did find something very, very interesting. Under a spot I'd never have looked unless searching for something small, I found a very tiny device that looked suspiciously like a tracker. At first, I was guessing because it couldn't be anything else. Even though it was deep under the seat, it couldn't have fallen there. It was securely placed, which really surprised me. Now, I'd understand if I were an important person or something, but I'm not. My company always knows where I am because I'm there for work, so there's no reason to track me. My wife knows where I am at all times, so there's no reason there either. And aside from them, no one else has access to my car. Well, Liam does, but he has even fewer reasons to do something like this. So I looked up what it was just to be sure, and it was definitely a tracker. After the initial shock, the tracker really scared me because why would anyone want to know where I am? Since I knew it couldn't be anyone close to me, I felt like the tracker must have been placed by someone who wanted to harm me, my family, or my company, or do something equally bad. I know it sounds a little silly to assume something like that, but can you blame me? A tracker isn't a normal thing to put on someone. After being scared, I thought the best thing would be to trick whoever was tracking me. So I put the tracker on a nearby cargo truck headed for Canada. Since I was afraid something might happen, I decided not to go back home and return to the hotel for another day. My thought was that if I were in some kind of immediate danger, going home would drag my wife into it. So I told the company I had some issues and would return tomorrow. I told my wife I had extra work. Then I drove around for a while to see if anyone was following me. I used everything I'd seen in situations like this in movies because I never thought I'd go through something like this myself. After a while, I was sure no one was following me, so I went back to the hotel to think. The most incredible part of all this is that it had to be someone I didn't even know. So, how did they place the tracker? No one else touches my car except me, my wife, and my best friend. And my wife is the one who cleans it. She does it because she loves cleaning. So it's clear to me that it couldn't have been placed there without one of us noticing. As I was thinking about this, my wife called me to ask where I was. That was very strange because, obviously, I had already texted her, and although she is paranoid, she would normally just accept it. But suddenly, she started doubting me, saying I was a liar and kept asking where I was going. This struck me as really odd, considering I had just thrown away a tracking chip. You see, I had shown her on a video call that I was still at the hotel, and only then did she half believe me. Now, this made me suspicious of her because it was possible that her distrust of me had led her to put a tracking chip in the car, and she's the only person I believe could have done it successfully without me noticing. But, on the other hand, it's also one of the most absurd things because I've never done anything to fuel her distrust, so she has no reason to go that far. Besides, my loving wife would never do this because she'd think about how I would feel when I found out she didn't trust me at all. Now, I don't like the idea that it's my wife, so I decided to let it go and return home. But I didn't return home with my car, just to see what would happen. I left it at another friend's house and then went home. My wife got very angry with me and kept asking me to tell her the truth. She refused to believe that my car had broken down and was in a shop for a few days. What puzzles me the most is that she didn't even stop to think carefully about whether or not I was lying. I would have thought that after all these years, she'd be able to tell when I'm lying. But it was as if she already knew, to the point where she still had to disbelieve me. As much as I hate thinking about it, this has made me even more suspicious of her. But I don't want to believe she's capable of something like this. If it's her, then it means she doesn't trust me at all, even after so many years of knowing everything about me. So guys, please tell me what I should do. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and yes, I made a decision. I don't know if it was the right one or not, but unfortunately for me, it seems more and more like I should have let all of this go when I had the chance. Based on what just happened, I think I've awakened a bear that's going to destroy my relationship. Let me explain. I did a lot of thinking, and I mean a lot, not just for a day or two. I thought constantly about my decision for a week. A few days after my post, my wife's anger faded. She apologized for her behavior and said she was just worried, that her intuition told her something had happened. She asked me once more if something had happened, and I told her no. Then she asked me to bring the car back, so I did, and she seemed a little surprised by that. Now, it was easier to suspect my wife when she was mad at me. But as soon as she went back to being her loving self, suspecting something like this became 1,000 times harder. Every time I considered the possibility that she was behind this, I ended up feeling very guilty. On several occasions I was about to tell her everything, but something told me I needed to dig deeper. After a lot of thinking, I decided I needed to investigate. But the problem was that I'm not cut out for investigations. I knew that no matter how much I dug or followed clues, I wouldn't be able to find anything. That's why I contacted a friend I'd made through work, Dave, the so-called private investigator. I've used Dave's help many times for work-related matters, so I thought he'd be the best option to figure out what was going on. I contacted him, and we met. He scared me a bit with a warning. As soon as he knew this was something personal, he told me I needed to be prepared to face the consequences because he might find anything. I agreed and told him everything that had happened. After listening, he gave me the warning again. He told me he was sure I wasn't going to like what we would discover, and he asked me once more if I was sure. I'm not going to lie. The second time he warned me, it scared me more. I felt like he was only saying that because he was sure my wife was involved. I mean, if anyone could have a better idea in this situation, it's him, right? Still, I told him to go ahead because I think it's better to know than to remain in the dark. But now, a week later, I'm regretting it a bit because it seems like it's something really big. And it's not just about suspicions regarding my wife. Today, he called me and said he needed a few more days. He said he almost had everything, but there were some pieces of the puzzle missing, and he wanted to complete them before telling me. Then he said I should prepare myself for devastating news. This made me very sad because it confirmed my wife had done this. So I told Dave that I was already prepared to hear that. But Dave just told me it was much worse than either of us had imagined and hung up the call. I'm really scared to find out what's going on, and I'm pretty sure my relationship might end based on Dave's reaction. I'll let you know when Dave tells me what's happening. Update 2. Oh my God, guys, Dave was absolutely right. I wasn't prepared for the information he gave me. For those of you who supported my wife, get ready to be shocked. It's been a few weeks since my last update, Almost a week after writing the previous one, Dave asked me to meet with him. He apologized for what he was about to tell me, and at that moment, I was so scared I was shaking. Then he told me that my wife wasn't the only one behind the tracking. My best friend, Liam, was also involved in the plan. At first, I was confused until he explained that the two of them were sleeping together, and the tracker was to know my location at all times so they could get away with it. I was stunned. I couldn't even speak. Dave kept talking. He said he had no idea how long this had been going on, but he guessed it had been no less than a year. He showed me some photos of them kissing in Liam's car, and I immediately started crying. He has no idea. These are the two people in my life I trust the most. Liam is practically family, and his wife is like a sister to me. I couldn't believe it. Not just the fact that my wife did this, but also my best friend. Then, Dave said he wasn't done yet, and unfortunately, there was more bad news. For the past few months, my wife has been mentioning that she wanted me to give her the house where my parents live. As soon as I started earning money, I bought a big old house for my parents. When I got married, Melissa and I moved into the house they gave me. I told Melissa I could transfer our house into her name, but she wanted the big house. She said she didn't want to move there or anything, she just wanted to own it. She made it seem like it was more about being fair since we would both have a house, and since I never thought we'd separate, I agreed. I told her we'd do it in a few months, then never thought about it again, and she didn't bring it up again, probably to avoid raising suspicion. Then, Dave told me her plan was to take the house from me, kick my parents out, and then leave me. I couldn't believe him because my wife isn't like that, but when he showed me a recording that wasn't very clear, I had to believe it. Honestly, if none of this had happened, I might not have believed him. But since he'd already uncovered so much, I had absolutely no choice. After that, Dave asked me what I was going to do. I told him I didn't know, that I would think about it. But at that moment, I had already decided I wasn't going to let her and Liam get away with it so easily. I treated them like my own blood, and they just played me. You know, I would have taken a bullet for either of them, and I can't even put into words how much it hurts to learn the truth. I think you can understand why I decided to get revenge, right? So, after that, I placed small recorders, the ones Dave recommended, all around the house and in our cars. And you know, these recorders are really good. I also installed some hidden cameras to gather as much evidence as possible. My plan was simple. I was going to make fake documents and give the house to my wife. Obviously, after that, she wouldn't wait long to execute her plan, and when she did, I was going to expose her and my best friend in front of everyone. Update 3. Finally, I have some good news to share. It's been over 2 months since my last update, so I'll get straight to the point. A week after my last update, I already had everything I needed. So I told my wife I'd made the arrangements to give her the house. A few days later, my wife reminded me about it, and I told her I'd already arranged it and had started the process of transferring the house to her. I signed the fake papers and gave her the house, and she seemed happy throughout the whole process. I hadn't spent time with Liam in weeks, and it was already getting weird, so I forced myself to go out with him one night. Every second was hell, but I did it because I knew I'd get my revenge in the end. My wife waited a few weeks and then executed her plan, exactly as I expected. She went to my parents' house and kicked them out, claiming she was leaving me and the house was hers. Obviously, I acted like I had no idea what she was doing. I contacted her parents and went to confront her along with my parents and hers. I also called Liam and asked him to come to my mom's house to help me with the mess. I did this at a time when I knew his wife was with him, so he had to come with her. Let me tell you, both my wife and Liam were quite happy because they didn't know I had a foolproof plan and a little surprise up my sleeve. When I arrived at the house with our parents, Melissa's mom asked her what she was doing, and my wife started spinning a victim's story. She said I was a terrible husband who drank all the time and hit her whenever I felt like it. She also said I forced her to get rid of babies even though she wanted to have children. She made sure to tell everyone that's why she tricked me into giving her the house, and that now she was leaving me. She acted so well it was Oscar-worthy. And then, right on time, Liam and his wife arrived. Turns out Melissa had expected her friend, Liam's wife, to bring Liam, and it was all part of her bigger trap. I kept acting like I didn't know anything and asked Melissa what she was doing. I told everyone, no, this is a lie. Then Liam stepped forward and told our families that Melissa was telling the truth and that he had witnessed some of those things. He said she had asked him for help, and although he loved me, he couldn't stop me from becoming a monster. Well, I have to admit again, they did pretty well, and the family seemed convinced at that point. So you know what? I thought the drama had gone on long enough and asked them to tell the truth, or I would. Of course, they didn't budge, so I told everyone how Liam and Melissa had been sleeping together and how all of this was part of their plan. It was hilarious to see them confused since there was no way I should have known this. Then I showed the truth, including recordings, photos of them kissing, and even videos of them meeting behind my back. Dave also gave me a lot more evidence, which helped a lot. My part was practically over as soon as it began because I had overwhelming evidence. Melissa's parents just stared at her in shock, and when she tried to explain herself, her mother slapped her right there and then. At that moment, Liam tried to say something to his wife, and he got slapped too. I told Melissa the papers were fake and that we were over. She started crying. My mother-in-law told Melissa she was cutting her off from the family and didn't want to see her again. I told her she'd soon receive the divorce papers. When Liam's wife told him they were over too, he got furious with me and tried to hit me. Well, I grabbed him and threw him to the ground. My dad called the police and Liam was arrested. And although Melissa begged a lot, we kicked her out of the house. My mother-in-law is now apologizing to me, and I told her it's not her fault at all. When I got home, I found Melissa waiting for me, begging, saying she had nowhere to go. I told her I didn't care. It's been almost a month since then, and we're, well, in the middle of divorce proceedings. Liam's wife also moved out and filed for divorce. Liam is not doing well. You won't believe this. He contacted me a week ago asking for help. He said he needed help paying bills and begged me to assist him as his old friend. I told him he didn't deserve the word friend. Even enemies would have done less, and I left him to suffer. The last I heard about Melissa was that she tried to go back to her family, but no one took her in. Her parents made it clear to everyone that she was no longer part of the family. She then stayed with some friends, but they couldn't help her much and kicked her out after a few weeks. Now she's practically homeless. As for me, I'm doing okay, about as well as someone in my position can be. Update 4. I'm only making this update because many people have asked me to share how my life is going and whether the divorce is finalized. And yes, everything seems to be better now, especially since I'm no longer legally tied to that woman. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks ago, and these have been the best 3 weeks I've had in a long time. Liam and his wife's divorce was finalized before mine, and if he was already struggling financially, it's much worse now because he has to pay child support. I know Liam has tried to get back together with my ex-wife because, during one of the divorce hearings, she told me she no longer saw him and that we could start over. But I told her yes, we'd start over, but separately. She began crying audibly, and her lawyer had to console her, all while she looked at me like I was the villain in all of this, which I found amusing. My lawyer later advised me to talk to her as little as possible, and that's what I've done. I don't understand why my ex-wife thinks telling me she's no longer seeing him is enough for us to get back together. That's not what I'm looking for with this divorce. I just want to get away from her. I know many people have called me foolish for not seeing the signs, like how my ex-wife controlled me when I traveled. According to many, that should have been the first red flag to leave the marriage. But let me tell you something. For people on the spectrum, it's hard to notice these things. That's why, for me, it's easier to work with computers and servers, which is what I do, especially when I travel. Because they're easier for me to read. That was my choice when I went to college. Because, as you can see, I wouldn't have been good at negotiating or reading people's intentions. Either way, I don't want to justify myself. I just want to share why all of this hasn't been so easy for me. I wish it could have been different, but it's something I've dealt with my entire life. I could share many anecdotes about people taking advantage of this, but that would stray from the main issue I'm dealing with now. I also wish people wouldn't take advantage of it, but at least I'm not so naive as to believe everyone will be good to me and things will be easier. I didn't expect it from my own wife, the one who had sworn to love and be faithful to me, and she betrayed me, so my expectations are much lower now. But I won't deny that this has happened to me many times in life, and I can't promise it won't happen again. Still, I don't want to end this story without talking about Liam, because that's another frequent question in my posts. And although I've already mentioned he lost in court, at least in terms of child support, I wanted to add that he's living in a pretty bad place, or so his ex-wife told me. She and I have stayed in touch throughout this process since I had much of the information she used for her divorce. This has allowed me to know what's happened to him. I can also tell you she's already met someone, and according to her, Liam wasn't too happy to hear about it. Apparently, after everything blew up, he apologized several times to his ex-wife, but like me, she didn't accept it. As for whether my ex and Liam are together now, I don't know. There's no one who can tell me anything about it since I don't talk to my ex, and Liam's ex-wife doesn't know either. Edit. I forgot to mention the outcome of the divorce with my ex. Well, she didn't have to pay alimony, and the house I gave to my parents was in their name. Also, the house that originally belonged to my parents was going to be inherited by me eventually, so she couldn't claim that either. In short, she walked away with very little from our marriage because of her infidelity.